Hey everybody, we're going to continue now, and we're going to talk a little bit more about grouping data together. But before we do that, I want to articulate once again that how important it is to hide your work when you don't want the audience to look at something. What I mean by that is, if you want your audience to study this main piece of data, and you don't want them to look at this, then hide it. Quite simply, hide it. Now, if you wanted to build a dashboard or develop something off of that, then you would create a new sheet with a dashboard on it, and you would strip this off so that it's away from here. Oftentimes users click on things, double click, like look what happens here. I just double clicked this, froze the computer, showed this new data set, and your user's gonna be like, what the hell happened there? What happened? I'm so confused. What did I do wrong? And then they're giving you a phone call, an email, they're pausing their review, it's holding the company up, it's taking your time away to answer that question. Okay. So we're going to hide this because we don't need it anymore. It was part of just a demonstration of some things you could do with the data set. We're going to go back here. We're going to go back and do a pivot table again. So we'll go up to A1, not B1, A1, and hit pivot table. And this time we're going to take the pricing. Okay. Remember before we had all this pricing. We're going to study some pricing here. And what I want to do with this is I'm going to put in pricing again. I'm going to try this out, see how it works. Now it's a sum of pricing. I'm actually going to fix this in a minute, but what I want to show you here, the purpose of this video, and I'll zoom it in at this point now so you can see it better, is this grouping. If I right click on the first piece of data, not the header, not row labels, but right click on this piece of data where this 301 is, and I go to group, okay, group, Excel will suggest how it might think grouping is appropriate. So 301 to 1754. Now, if they do that, it's going to be by 100. So let's just hit OK and see how that looks. So remember, so I'm going to undo that just so you can see the contrast here. We have 493 unique prices. Or sorry, it goes down to row 493. When in fact we have, and I'm just going to show you this officially, we have 490 unique prices, okay, because we don't count these rows here. Now that's too much data for a business analyst to study. So we're going to do this grouping thing, hit OK. So essentially we're kind of building a histogram. Now sum of price, if you're trying to figure out what the dollar value is associated with some of this stuff, but I like to do count. Okay. Now what this data set is saying is there is a whopping 9,536 airfare flights, so rows of data, attributed to a price between 301.51 and 401.51. Now you might be like, how the heck is there so many? Well, don't forget your data set has a lot of rows of data. Okay, a lot of rows. Okay, so let's go back here, and I would argue this is still too much information. Too many candlesticks, if you will, in a histogram to really analyze. So we're going to right click again and go to that group thing. We're going to do it, but keep in mind this time I want to start with 300 just because it's nice and crisp and business people can understand that. So we're going to type in 300, the check mark goes away, and ending at 1754, that's fine. It won't go any higher because it recognizes there isn't any data higher than that. But I want to change this to, let's see here, if I have 1754, 300, I've essentially got 1400 for my range, 1454 obviously. So if I do 100, I'm going to get about 14 or so rows, right? If I do 200, I'll get about 7 rows. 300, let's go with 300 here. And now I have very limited, and I've got my zeros that us business people like to see. Okay, now data ink ratio sucks here. So if you're watching this video, and hopefully you've watched other videos by now, and you know what I'm complaining about, get those commas in there. And if it's dollars, it's not dollars, it's the count of transactions at this price. But you want to do as much data ink as possible. Now we have that there. It's awesome. It's very useful because now we can say most of the flights are between $600 and $900. Now, if you wanted to get more granular, you go back and you do those rows as like grouped up by 100. Now, what I like to do at this point is I like to put in a new chart. Okay, so I'm going to go up to Pivot Charts and put in a column. And folks, that is another way to do a histogram without the data analysis pack. Now, a couple of things I want to talk about here with this chart because it's a horrible chart, and if you're in one of my classes and submit this, you will lose points. Okay, it tells me nothing about the data set. And we have total here, total here. We have count of price and price. These are field buttons, get rid of them. Watch what happens when we get rid of them. So we want to hide all field buttons. The chart gets bigger so our audience can see more of it. Over here, we need to convert this or put a label on this for count. We have to redo this, and we don't even need this total here because we only have one variable that we're tracking. So get rid of that, and we're going to do total flights by price group or grouping. You know, I'm not going to sit here with semantics here and type it up. The point is, don't leave it as a simple title that it was before. Now, I would argue that this is still sloppy. It doesn't show that there's much effort put into it in the design aspects. So you could put a border around it like that, nice little border, makes it look sharper. You can do other things. I am going to challenge you to go up here into design mode and quick layout. And a couple of things are going to happen. We want to make sure that we have the axis title when we choose this. Now, you could put the data down there. That might be useful to your audience. I like that one. But point being, we need to have a title, okay, for our axes, okay? So the best way to do it is one of these because it produces a text box here and a text box here. Again, it brings that back. We can delete that out. So we can put number of flights or flight ranges, really. Price ranges actually is what that is. And instead of group, we could put a range by price range. Okay, and over here, we put number of flights. Okay, so that's a nice way to do this. Now you could right-click on this and outline. You could put in a black outline there and see what happens. Now it's crisper. You could get rid of this here if you wanted to. You could format the plot area, change it, do some stuff on the right side of your computer, and go to town on that if you will as well. So essentially, we have a histogram here using a pivot table, but more importantly, we're looking at data based on how we want to see it and what we think is going to be useful to us. And that is what is so critical. Now, one final thing that I want to mention as sloppy, sheet 2. Rename this thing, okay? So pivot table, flights by price range. Okay, because imagine now we've got several pivot tables running across our sheet. So we have pivot table flights by agency and year, and we have pivot table flights by price range. Okay, so shorter video this time, but just showing you some of the wonder and awe that is available. You could look at this and be like, oh yeah, 83. But now there is a really nice contrast here with that. If this is a histogram, we would say the tail is over here. So it is right skewed. The tail is over there.